The HP Spectre x360 is a thin and light 2-in-1 laptop with some nice specs and excellent battery life. In this detailed review, you'll find out everything you need to know to decide if it's a laptop you should consider. Starting with the specs, my unit has an 8th gen Intel Whiskey Lake i7-8565U quad-core CPU, 16GB of memory running in dual channel, 512GB of storage space from the Intel H10 Optane module, and 13.3-inch 1080p 60Hz touchscreen with no discrete graphics. Just the Intel UHD 620 graphics built into the CPU. There are a few different configurations available, including 4K screen for instance. You can find examples along with updated prices linked in the description. For network connectivity, it's got 802.11ac Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 5. It's too thin for an Ethernet port, so you'll need an adapter if you want to use that. I've got the dark ash color, which is this sort of brown-purple color with gold trims and accenting. The weight is listed at 1.32 kilos, and I found mine a little under this. Then with a small 65-watt power brick and cables for charging, the total weight rises to just under 1.6 kilos. It's quite a portable machine, at just 1.47cm thick, 31cm in width, and 22cm in depth. And this small footprint gives us 8mm thin screen bezels on the sides, though it was thicker up the top and down the bottom. However, this does still provide adequate space for the camera to remain above the display.
The webcam looks about average and the microphone sounds okay, which is a bit surprising considering it's a 1080p camera, so I guess resolution isn't everything.
The keyboard has no backlighting, something I instantly missed while typing in a darker room. Otherwise, I liked typing on the keyboard. The only thing I didn't personally like was the small arrow keys. Here's how it sounds to give you an idea of what to expect. There's a fingerprint reader on the right-hand side below the keyboard. It worked alright, though was a little slower compared to what I'm used to. There was some keyboard flex while pushing down hard. However, it wasn't too bad considering the metal build and that the machine is on the thinner side. The lid was also quite sturdy without much flex, and the hinge mechanism felt solid. The touchpad uses Synaptics drivers. It was very smooth to the touch and worked okay, just not as good as a precision touchpad. As for the touchscreen, I've measured the color gamut with the Spider 5 and got 99% of sRGB, 70% of NTSC, and 76% of Adobe RGB. At 100% brightness, I measured 359 nits in the center with an 1120:1 contrast ratio. So overall, well above average compared to most laptops I've recently covered. Backlight bleed doesn't look great in this photo, however I couldn't actually notice these imperfections while viewing darker content. It comes with a pen and required Quad A battery which you can use for drawing on the screen in a tablet fashion. This is further aided by the fact that the screen bends the entire way back like a tablet, making it a 2-in-1 device. When you flip the screen back, Windows enters tablet mode and you can draw on the screen. I'm by no means an expert when it comes to tablets, but it seemed to work pretty well for me. On the left, there's the power button right on the back corner, then single USB 3 Type A port. On the right, there's a micro SD card slot, a switch to physically disable the camera, USB Type-C port with Thunderbolt 3 support, 3.5mm audio combo jack, and a second USB Type-C port on the back corner, again with Thunderbolt 3 support. The speakers actually sound pretty good for a laptop. There are 2 located on the bottom front sides and another 2 above the keyboard. At maximum volume, it got surprisingly loud for a smaller machine, and the latency mon results looked good. There's nothing on the back, just more of that gold trim and the hinges, while the front is more of the same, just gold trim. Underneath is pretty standard, just some air intake vents towards the back and rubber feet which did a good job of preventing movement while in use. It wasn't too difficult to open up, but you need to first take off both the front and rear rubber feet. There are 4 Phillips head screws under the back foot and 2 under the front. Once inside, we've got the battery down the bottom, while the motherboard only gives us access to the single M.2 drive, which has our Intel H10 Optane module installed. More on that soon. Memory is soldered to the motherboard, so make sure you get enough RAM when buying. It's got a 61 watt-hour battery, and with the screen at 50% brightness and background apps disabled, I was able to stream YouTube video for 11 hours and 41 minutes, an extremely impressive result, easily making this the best laptop I've ever tested in terms of battery life in this test. It also charges using the Type-C ports, and either of the 2 ports work for this. Thermal testing was completed with an ambient room temperature of 21 degrees Celsius. At idle down the bottom, it was quite cool. Then the other 2 results are just from running the 8/64 CPU stress test with just CPU only checked. In this case, undervolting by minus 0.1 volts with throttle stop lowered the temperatures a little. However, thermal throttling was still taking place in both tests. These are the clock speeds for the same tests just shown. We're able to boost clock speed by around 300 MHz with the undervolt. While under these CPU-only loads, we're also hitting the 20 watt power limit, which along with the thermals was another limitation, though realistically, these speeds aren't too bad for such a thin machine. Here's what we're looking at in terms of CPU performance with Cinebench. The single-core clock speeds are actually pretty good, not too different from an i7 H-series chip, though the multi-core speeds are about half as much given this is a quad-core CPU with a lower power limit. Here's what the fan noise sounded like while running these tests. At idle, the fan wasn't running at all, it was completely silent. Even while under full-on worst-case CPU load with the internals in the mid 90 degrees Celsius range, it's still fairly quiet when compared against the more powerful machines I usually test. Here's what we're looking at in terms of external temperatures where you'll actually be touching. At idle, it was a little warm in the center towards the back. Interestingly, while under stress test, it's only getting a few degrees warmer on the keyboard. Right at the back is pretty hot now, but you shouldn't be touching there anyway. As we've only got Intel UHD 620 graphics, we're not expecting great gaming performance. However, I was able to run some less demanding titles at 720p. Dota 2 actually still ran perfectly fine, which makes sense given it seems to depend more on CPU power than graphics. While Overwatch was sort of playable, but it did feel a bit choppy even at minimum settings. As it's got Thunderbolt 3 available, technically it should be possible to attach an external GPU enclosure to improve gaming performance. Let's talk about the storage for a bit, as this laptop is making use of Intel's latest H10 Optane module. In the past, Intel Optane was used as a cache in front of a much slower hard drive. It would store frequently accessed files on the faster Optane module to improve performance. In my previous video on Optane, I found that it was only really going to be useful in some niche scenarios. As for the most part, you could buy a cheaper and larger SSD instead. The new H10 Optane modules combine the fast Optane memory with NAND storage, so basically a single M.2 stick, which acts as both your typical SSD for storing files, but also as a layer of Optane cache on the same piece of hardware. You can get the module in different storage sizes, and my HP Spectre has the 32GB of cache plus 512GB of storage option. So basically, think of it as a 512GB drive with some dedicated cache for storing frequently accessed files. Basically, you don't need to do anything, the system should handle this automatically. However, you can manually pin specific files or programs to the Optane cache to ensure they're faster. I've used Crystal DiskMark to test the speed of the SSD component only before enabling the Optane cache, so this should just be the speed of the 512GB drive. Likewise, I could also test the 32GB Optane memory by itself. As before enabling it, it shows up as a separate drive. Finally, here are the results after enabling Optane through the Intel Optane Memory and Storage Management software. It's this software that lets you manage Optane. It'll likely already be installed. For me it wasn't, and I had to grab it through the Windows Store. As for some practical differences on how this helps, we'll start off with system boot time. So the time it takes from the system to be completely powered off to logged in at the Windows desktop. In this case, with Optane enabled, it was booting up 9% faster. A fair improvement in terms of percentage, though only around 2 seconds different. Not really enough to make a noticeable difference. Otherwise, I also tried opening some different games and apps, but found no real difference in terms of speed. Though the games in particular would be too big to really cache efficiently. For updated pricing, check the links in the description, as prices will change over time. At the time of recording, in the US, the HP Spectre x360 seems to go for under $1,400 US. However, it doesn't seem to be clear which are using Intel Optane. So what did you think of the HP Spectre x360 13T? Overall, I thought it was quite a nice machine for its purpose with good build quality. It worked well as a tablet, and despite the form factor, there were decent levels of performance from the Intel i7-8565U CPU. The new Intel Optane H10 storage is a nice improvement over what Optane previously offered. However, given modern SSDs already offer exceptional performance in most cases, I don't think you'll notice too much of a speed boost practically. But hey, it was still faster when compared to SSD only, and I won't say no to extra performance. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find price differences of this model with and without Optane to compare though. As a thin and light 13-inch machine with a tiny power brick, it would be great for traveling with if you don't need graphical power. Light gaming was possible, but don't expect much from the Intel integrated graphics. However, you could likely expand upon this with an external GPU enclosure as it has two Thunderbolt 3 ports. The option to charge with USB Type-C was great, and by far for me personally, the most impressive factor was the near 12 hours of battery life during video playback. The best result I've ever gotten in this test in 100 plus laptop reviews. The speakers are able to get very loud for a small machine, the screen looked great and was above average. Using it in tablet mode and drawing with it worked well too. I would have liked to have seen keyboard backlighting, as typing in a dark room wasn't great, and this is from someone that normally uses a keyboard with blank keys. Otherwise, the only other issue that comes to mind was that the fingerprint scanner seemed a little slow, though that's not exactly the end of the world. The memory is soldered to the motherboard, but for machines this size, I think we're just going to have to start accepting that. So you'll need to buy it with the memory configuration you need up front. Let me know what you thought about the HP Spectre x360 down in the comments. And if you're new to the channel, consider getting subscribed for future laptop reviews and tech videos like this one.